Turns out he's a major cinephile. They don't watch enough movies! It's a very simple formula! And here we go. Well, another week and another new scare-tastic show available to stream, this time on Netflix to get you ready for October. We have previously talked about Mike Flanagan's work on this podcast. Not the most recent show, but most recently The Haunting of Hill House. And while I really do want to make the trip to Bly Manor, I first had to jump on the just-released Midnight Mass miniseries. Flanagan has also brought us some Ouija board movies that are super not my thing, and a super weird Gerald's game. But we also got the very surprisingly fun sequel to The Shining, Dr. Sleep, because of him. But I had an amazing time with Hill House, both from a scares and emotional stakes level. So yes, I was really excited to see something new from the director. So here we go. Let's see if you should attend this midnight mass or stay in bed at your house or manor instead. I gotta put it out there just before I start the episode. That book, like Chicken Soup for Your Soul, this show, and in general, seemingly Mike Flanagan miniseries are like chicken soup for your soul from a movie thing. I don't want to read it. Let's experience it. Let's be a part of it and let it come into our systems, not having to read words on paper. So, as usual, let's talk some actors. So I have yet to see Bly Manor. Some of the actors might not be aha, I recognize that person moments for me. There are some returners from Dr. Sleep. Sadly, no Ewan McGregor, who's probably a little busy with his Obi-Wan miniseries. The big ads coming from Hill House are one of the stars of the show, Kate Siegel, one of the adult children of the Crane family, and Henry Thomas, who was the younger version of the family patriarch Hugh Crane, but I have talked about it time and time again. Unless there is a recurring character in a series like Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode, I'm cool not knowing all the actors and can instead get lost in their performances. So, a brief actor's nod. Now we can get on to the main meat and potatoes of the episode and find out how Netflix fared with their latest frightful foray. I once again get huge Harper's Island vibes. That's what I always think of when I think of scary, uneasy island settings. In the same way that cold vampires will always get me to think of 30 Days a Night, or Sean Bean will make me think I should probably watch this movie. But if you have not seen the CBS 1-season 13-episode show Harper's Island, it too is a great way to scare up a good time. And you can stream that on Pluto TV for free. If you ever want to check out how to stream something, might I suggest you go to Real Good, a software that pairs splendidly with Letterboxd. You go to Real Good, you figure out where to watch that age-old classic, or you find something new. Step 2, you watch it. And step 3, pair that with, you immediately write your feelings down about why any project with Sean Bean is automatic 5-star. Easy as pie. Also, with another miniseries, we will go through each episode here. They do it in books is how they do it. So book 1 is Genesis. I feel like this was the case with Hill House too. I pretty much needed my Shazam open the entire time for some oldies fun. This did dissipate a bit, but in episode 1, immediately we have Neil Diamond. Such a strong win in the positive column for me. I love my oldies music, and while Neil Diamond isn't that old, it fits with my usual Spotify vibe, which is the same as my overall vibe, which is anything media-wise. I love things dark and depressing. The more grief and trauma exploration, the better, apparently. And Flanagan is great at unnerving ghostly figures and haunted past. Once again, I'm here for it. And if you like Neil Diamond, this show, well, this episode, they bring it back a little bit in there. It's really going to be for you. With 2 separate songs in the first 7 minutes or so, these may be long episodes at about an hour a pop, but they are only 7, so it is technically an easy weekend binge. You should split it up in at least 2 days. One day of this show would be probably a little much and too slow at parts. You may find yourself getting a little bit distracted around episode 4 or 5. We'll get to some viewing options at the end of this whole thing. Now, you could wait for October if you want. I mean, I don't spoil it here yet. Spoilers aplenty as the episode goes, but this could be a nice Halloween festive thing. It may not feel that way to start, but it could be. But if you're used to, Flanagan creations, especially on the Netflix sides, these are going to be, atmospheric, slow builds. I mean, Haunting of Hill House was more obvious horror with scary ghost houses. Small islands are harder to make obvious. Small-scale populated islands, if there isn't an inherent darkness like Under the Island or a curse on it like Fear Street, or anything that takes place in like Salem. I do live in Massachusetts, and I feel like I gotta see Salem this month. I've been here for about 4 years in some capacity. I gotta come up with some ideas for a Salem day trip, and if you have any, please let me know. It's a 4-hour total transit time. Please let me know on, hit me up in the DMs on Twitter at knickknack_IC or knickknack movies. Help me plan my spooky fall festive fun trip to Salem that hopefully I can make time for. I thought I was going to get more Harper's Island vibes from this show and episode, but I really think it was more and more, I know what you did last summer. I obviously now looking back on it, nowhere near that. I mean, look, they had haunted fisherman jokes in there, and it is a fishing village, but really it was like neither of those shows at all. I just think of things that took place in island fishing villages. I mean, and I'll get back to this, but the composers, and I don't even know who they are. I'm not going to look it up for this episode, but I'm going to look it up as soon as I'm done recording and editing this episode, who composes these Mike Flanagan shows, because the atmospheric tracks are on point and fire, and they really make things seem creepy, even when they should be pretty innocuous. This show really has all the early stereotype characters you come to expect in a horror thing. The sheriff, the town drunk, the crazy religious lady. You can slowly piece together what world they are trying to craft on this small island and the little different sects and partnerships. I also love how the scene being set shows how impoverished this town is. I mean, the sheriff's department is located in the general store, for crying out loud. Now, I gotta put a little warning out there, because the show did not have the warning, and you may want to know. So if you are a big fan of cats, or dogs, but we'll start with cats, you may not want to watch this show, / especially this episode. I'm a recent cat lover. I don't have a lot of time if I get a pet. I really want a dog, but it very well could end up being a cat, where my first pet is. I don't love cat killing things in my media, and I don't like some big creature that's doing it. It's not super visceral to start. You do see it, but I don't want to see it at all. Let's be real, I hate to see it. Now, as an altar server in my past life, I gotta say, I don't know the last time I've seen so much of a mass in the scripted film, movie, TV show aspect. I mean, the normal amount you'd see is like, exorcism movies existing in a church. Speaking of that, want to hear a dad joke? How do ghosts stay in shape? They exorcise. How sensational is that? Love a good festive dad joke. Dad, if you're listening, I know I told you that one already. I hope you're still getting a kick out of that. Honestly, one of my favorite subtle moments in this first episode has to do with church vestment robe colors, and this new priest who is wearing colors to celebrate something specific as opposed to the standard ones. And since I was pretty sure he was evil, that's the whole point of this show after all. That at least was advertised. It's not the full point, but part of it. I don't think that was an accident. And obviously, as you go into the show, you'll realize it wasn't. Obviously there's some evil plan he is celebrating or welcoming. The atmosphere of unease stuff is so good. The episode sets up so much darkness subtly. But what's not so subtle is a bunch of dead cats, a beach full of dead cats. I hate that, obviously. And yeah, we have to see things are getting dark and spooky, but not really my cup of tea. Book 2, Psalms, silent P there. Some people would say Seinfeld is a show about nothing. I'm one of those people. I've only seen a few episodes. I'm one of those people. I don't think that's a compliment. And at times, these episodes may feel crazy slow. I mean, peak PLL watcher me knew the best, most true thriller parts of these episodes. The parts that tricked me into thinking this was a good show. Genevieve from college, if you're listening, I still think you tricked me into watching PLL and thinking it was good with some of the darker, scarier episodes. And then I got through the whole thing and realized, wow, this is not a great show. What did I do? I thank you, but I also blame you a little bit. I'm always going to put that out there on you. And like most of the show might have had just like garbage dialogue, but like that last minute end credit scene was always the best part of it. There's a subtle nature here on this show when you feel like things are not that bad on the island. Sure, the masked cat graveyard is neither subtle nor is it ordinary. I mean, this feels crazy ominous, like a canary in a mine shaft. But there is a fun ambiance that really keeps you wanting to watch more and more to see what happens next. Yes, the ghosts aren't floating around this island as obviously as Haunting of Hill House. The more personal demon stuff is there, but you're really just waiting for the hammer to drop and things to get weird. But it's also about the journey, not just the destination. Also, Kate Siegel, I forgot about this movie. I don't think it's as exciting as other people do. She was the lead in Hush, which was also like incredibly small scale, another Mike Flanagan production. She really was great in Hill House. I mean, everyone really was. But she has some great chemistry with the guy who feels like the lead in Zach Gilford. I don't know if the show really has a true lead. Honestly, it might be Kate Siegel. It probably is. But I was trying to place this actor, Zach Gilford, and turns out he was one of the guys in the Purge movies. He was in Anarchy, to be exact. He was the guy who died in the second one late, and his girlfriend went off with Michael K. Williams to fight the system. Also, super sad. Rest in peace, Michael Kenneth Williams. We talked about him, of course, in our Lovecraft Country episode. He's great in pretty much anything he does, but he really steals a show in the amazing HBO series Boardwalk Empire, my first HBO Max love. I mean, the biggest thing back to the show at hand is while we're waiting for some villainy from the priest, some Scooby-Doo. Yes, I intentionally referenced my last episode in case you haven't heard it yet, like a mask reveal, oh, Mr. Jenkins. But Hamish Linklater plays the charismatic role to perfection. And the writers really made some great sermon speeches. I feel like if you are crazy devout religious, you might find what this becomes sacrilegious. But having that upbringing of a Catholic boy, I appreciate this stuff. And I feel like I'm going to get, and I did get, more of the storytelling of this with that baseline knowledge and experience. Now, I don't have the full, perfect, 100% knowledge of everything religious in the world, but having that baseline really feels like that helps a bit. I think the thing that this kind of reminded me of a bit was you really had no clue what was going on. Predicting things were crazy hard, but this new priest, my first prediction I thought was this new priest is somehow the old priest, like brought back, and maybe there's some evil mixed in there somehow. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of cool things going on in this show, but I was once again, another animal thing. I think this is the last big one that I can think of. I was pretty pissed with how much animal death this show had in the first 2 episodes. There's no way I will be watching this show, and that's my stance on having that much animal death. I mean, even one of the better Halloweens, I think a couple of the Halloweens have dog deaths in it, which not about. But I gotta say, this show really has some phenomenal storytelling, so maybe I'll just try and quickly skirt on past those parts with the animal deaths. But obviously I will take way more Neil Diamond as opposed to it's just dog death stuff. This show is emotional and great, but the amount of animal deaths early on is not so good here. And we haven't talked about, I'm not even going to say characters' names probably through most of this because I really don't know them, but evil church lady, who's not evil demon evil or anything, just crazy religious out lady, obviously responsible. Midnight Mass has great dark music and ambiance. The acting is great. Everything is super uneasy, and Catholic Nick appreciates the church bits that led to more darker storytelling a few episodes in. But I super don't need that much cute animal deaths. Stop killing cats and dogs in the show, please. But you can throw in the entire Neil Diamond discography. The more this show wants to dole out, the better. The sheriff in this is actually a known actor. I don't know if he's a well-known, crazy well-known actor, but Raul Coley, I did not see iZombie. Probably never will. That might be too quirky for my CW taste. I know that's saying something. We talked about how garbage Rain is briefly. I don't know if iZombie is that bad, but it feels a little too much for me. But I do love zombie things, so never say never, I guess. But that's, I think, the thing he's most known for. He also voices Scarecrow, or did, on the sensational Harley Quinn animated show that is thankfully going to get a season 3 on HBO Max sometime in 2022. Thankfully, we also get another season of a different adult animated show soon enough in November with Big Mouth. Very excited for that. That came out of nowhere. Incredibly excited for that to come soon enough. Honestly, I like Big Mouth because I think we've talked about this on the adult animated episode and a different Big Mouth season specific episode. I like the traumatic exploration things, and I've talked about that with a lot of horror things. And honestly, there's something different that this show does, and there's like some real life theology discussions, and it's crazy interesting in the show. There's no good or bad with religion. I mean, we can maybe discuss what the end point of the show is. I don't think it's to damn religion as a whole. I mean, look, faith and all that stuff. And this isn't a religious podcast, so let's not get too deep into it. But the show does dictate it a little bit. But with the, discussion that the writers made between the, Guilford and Linklater, they have great chemistry in these scenes. This, isolated island feels so realized, and their isolated one-on-one discussions also feel just super like they breathe life into you. And, at times the show feels like a normal island, but the unease and scares feel almost more haunting as opposed to a haunted doll or a dream monster man with knife fingers. And this show, and most Flanagan shows, have jump scares that are predicated by music cuts that I feel like every single one got me every time, no matter what episode we're on. I feel like they eventually brushed away a little bit as it went, but especially early on, there was these jump scares that every single musical scratch got me. I will say it took ages for the first person kill, and while they really play it coy, I'm once again 2 episodes in super excited that it took so long to really see things start to go wrong. Well, that and the crazy wheelchair almost taunting to having this girl walk again. I mean, miracles are cool and all, but I would be out of there in a heartbeat, whatever it takes. And man, does this show and Flanagan know how to end an episode. Book 3, Proverbs. The more I hear the Monsignor, I don't even know how to pronounce it, that title, I can't help but think about AHS Asylum. That season actually feels like it has a lot in common. It's isolated to a degree based on an asylum as opposed to a uncommunicating, unavailable island other than one ferry back and forth. But there is so much same between these two. It's not as visceral, the show, as AHS, especially throughout. AHS is almost always aggressively brutal and gory, but I think this is probably a little more emotional, some would say. But that season of this show both have that combination of religion and horror that I feel like you only see in exorcism things with ladies flipping their heads around 360, floating around and throwing up and everything, which I've started that exorcism show on Hulu from Fox back in the day, but haven't really felt the burning desire to dive back in anytime soon. Still, also on FX on Hulu, have yet to see a single episode of AHS Double Feature, which I'll have to make up for one of these days. That is not something I'm proud of. I'm hoping that I can start into that soon. Maybe I'll do a binge. I did, 9 seasons in 2 weeks, so I feel like I can do 1 season in a couple days. Easy peasy. But I think when I think back to the show, super happy that they, grow the backstory a little bit. It's all slow reveals of information with how this new priest, who's not all that new, came to be. Even if it's just a teaser of what happened to, the old Monsignor. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to stop saying the word now. I don't know what people would have done in the real world 2021 if someone, someone can walk again miracle happened in an actual mass. I mean, I feel like there'd be a lot of TikToks about things like that, and that would spread the word like crazy. But I don't know what real people would do in a real situation like that. I think people would be a little uneasy, and I love how just uneasy things are overall. We have miracles floating around. We have a further indoctrination into religion with these miracles, and things are just a great mystery. And while the mass cat murder is more visceral. Maybe it's not as exciting as someone walking for the first time in ages. The build was so much more exciting, exploring the fallout and aftermath of episode 3 as opposed to the masked cat funeral. So clearly there has to be something about killing living things to absorb energy. Well, that was another prediction I had, to distribute, to make miracles and heal others and such. It wasn't so untrue, but it wasn't 100% accurate either. But that's sort of a weird half-truth. But this show actually gave me the same active watching experience of WandaVision, of constantly guessing and no way knowing the final result. I mean, obviously there's no, this mass global audience and a weekly watching period like with that Disney Plus marvelous Marvel show. There's no real aggressive spoilers out there on every social media platform in the world. But there is excitement with this show of not outright horror, but things that are just all messed up. I hope more people watch this show. I mean, it's only been out for a handful of days, but you should, if you can get past the animal things in the first few episodes, you should probably do this. I guess that feels early to say, but I'm just throwing it out there. There are, look, it's like the real world. There are some tragedies, some scares, all that stuff, things we all experience in everyday life, right? But honestly, this show, like life, has some really nice, cute, just like human interaction moments between people that just make you feel every emotion at once. This show will make you feel love, hope, joy, fear, depression, and so much more. These shows are emotionally exhausting in the best possible ways. And more Neil Diamond is probably the best part of this all. I feel like this is the last Neil Diamond song after this part. But 3 Neil Diamond songs is 3 that I am all about. I don't really know a lot about the actor Samantha Sloan, but she is the perfect villain of a, overzealous church lady. And while this episode is all about celebrating miracles, in plural, the genuine real-life horror of forcing religion onto school children and doing it all with, a smile and kindness, that is the true horror. Of the truest horror this show has seen, be it the TV show or the movie version of The Mist, that stuff is scary stuff. Once again, there may be some cons of your particular religious beliefs in watching this, but coming at it with me, holy cow, this is perfect for those who have some spirituality. The trauma, exploration, and grief and guilt is once again some deep shit that is so good. Even 3 episodes in, I'm still super curious about, how the priest gets his powers, and his sickness tied to his powers is fascinating. Not unlike this show as a whole. I truly am and was so happy that I, got some of the predictions right. Not like everyone's saying Mephisto's in WandaVision. He could still be. We never know. That's the fun of that show. You'll never really know what's going on until we get through Doctor Strange and the Spider-Man sequels. But knowing that the priest was a younger version of the same priest, I mean, I can't tell if, that's a vampire thing, which I had no clue that vampires would be in this. That was a huge surprise to me. I feel like it's, something like maybe deeper and religious and maybe not just a vampire. At least that was what the show was leading you to believe, but at the end of the day, a vampire is a vampire. But this more religious take on a classic vampire tale is pretty cool, and yet again, another reminder of how badly I need to get back and finish The Strain, because I've talked a lot about how much I enjoy that show, and it really is that good. Book 4, Lamentations. So now we have to figure out, vampire rules. The priest was fine for a while in the sun, but eventually he wasn't. So I guess the rules now are, maybe he could be in the sun and function when the vampire beast was fed and good. Maybe their life forces are tied in together. That's normally how master vampire and sub-vampires work. Kind of makes sense. Now, maybe it's all based on his own stuff. And I know what it is now, but I'll tell you just how long it takes for me to figure it out. So, longer than I would have cared to admit. I mean, I thought there was no world. I don't know for a second I thought this was some deep angel in the deserts of Damascus. I mean, no clue how long that vampire was surviving for in the darkness of the desert. I mean, that's something to ponder without any people to feed on, but like I said, stuff that makes you think. Like, I know there's always that thought of, right, fallen angels and the evilness of all that stuff. Sure, but like that's a vampire. There's no world. Wings don't really matter. Honestly, this vampire looked like, a much stronger version, but one of the malnutrition vampires in Daybreakers, a way better vampire movie than people give it credit for. Is it great? No. Do I like that Willem Dafoe's in it? Of course. Obviously, I'm a pretty big fan of Willem Dafoe. Hope he's in the new Spider-Man again as Norman Osborn, and I hope somehow that he can still be the current MCU Norman Osborn moving forward, and you see maybe he's Iron Patriot. I have many, many hopes for Willem Dafoe in the future, of course. Remember when he was in like a John Wick movie, just like the first one, but he was there. Let's not forget that. But enough about Willem Dafoe. To my vampire religion show that you should watch that I'm talking about. The reveal of taken blood samples bubbling in the sun, some of the rules are obvious, assuming the garlic one is, no way existing here. That one almost always comes off a bit goofy. And look, I love cooking with my garlic. I don't think that's going to save me from vampires, let's be real. Well, I cook with garlic powder, so maybe that's the issue. It's not garlic salt, though, garlic powder. It's the better one, of course. So I actually didn't know whose blood sample it was. It took me a while to figure it out. I think they just had blood samples from all these people, just had the blood, because we'll get there. Episode 4 was like crazy slow for a long time, but it did give us a first look at the priest being like clearly a vampire, not like a massive one like the other guy, but a vampire for sure. Licking gross floor bud. Like, it came at the expense of killing one of the more complex town drunk characters who, he had guilt, he lost his dog, he's the one who got that girl in the wheelchair by shooting her in like a hunting accident or something. Like, there was so much interest in his redemption and how it tied to our seemingly lead character guy, but was not to be. And I was interested in seeing more of this guy. But like, a vintage doomsayer like character, he was never going to last. And it was nice to finally see things a bit clearer. Like, drinking blood out of a guy's open head wound is pretty gosh darn clear if you ask me. I think the crazy part, and I don't know if this is the whole moral thing, but how willing everyone in this town turns to madness and keeping this vampire priest in power. And this is like really a different kind of horror. If you liked either version of The Mist but want less insect horror, something I am never about, but you want more religious fanaticism, in all honesty, this makes a stronger case, like, not good. But in The Mist, it seems like random acts that don't really have a basis, at least, here, the madness doesn't just feel like a random thing that happens because things are happening in the mist and crazy insect fear things. Like, it's a slow burn that makes, like, it seem like there are reasons to let a vampire feed on folks, because it lets a wheelchair girl walk, fixes mom's memory. There's so much here. And, it lets a vampire feed on folks with many cat sacrifices and a missing baby. That has to be a vampire thing. And it was. It took ages to figure out how the baby just disappeared. But I guess people would say, a couple vampire feedings is for the greater good. It's never the greater good. Rarely in movies is actually the greater good. It always sounds a little too I'm in a trance kind of thing. I gotta say though, 4 episodes in, I'm happy, even if it's a bit goofy. That the main vampire is running around like Mr. T in Resident Evil games in a trench coat and fedora. I mean, we saw glimpses of this creature on the island, but to finally see it here, like in the obviously building like artificial light, really like right in front of you, like that's something special. And it, like I said, it makes a lot more sense the first episode where they thought they saw the guy, the Monsignor, run around in the rain with his outfit, but it was instead a vampire. So to see that vampire exist in this goofy outfit, and to have such a jump between that and it like super feeds on the guy we thought was our main character. This episode was a super slow burn, but dang, it was like that that was a fire end, wasn't it? Like, holy cow. Book 5, The Gospel. At this point in the show, you kind of wonder where they can go from here with 3 episodes. Now, it did go to a very interesting place. And I will say, I think I got a little down on the show at a point. You know, we now know, you know, the miracle ailments are all from, you know, the most part having, you know, parishioners are drinking the vampire blood in their mass service. The wine is literally blood, vampire blood. It's not the transmutation. I forget what the transubstantiation. I forget what the word is, but it's not the religious act of changing it. Like, instead of something that's a little more sanctimonious, it's literally opening veins and pouring it out into a decanter and sucking it down your windpipe mouth hole. It actually took me way longer. I'm admitting it took me way longer to figure out how this was happening. I mean, that's how everyone gets their fixes. There was nothing about pleasing Master Daddy Vampire. It was just slurping up some vampire blood orange slushies, or whatever. Like, you know, Wheelchair Girl was one of the few that drank the communion going to the most masses, so it made sense that she was one of the first to react to it. Same thing with, I think, one of the older lady moms who kept becoming younger and younger and younger. Actually did a really good job de-aging people as we got to the last episode. And, like, when, you know, it is, you know, this vampire blood, like, and he's giving his own out, this priest guy, so he can only take so much giving without sucking other people's down. Unless his vampire benefactor is giving him blood, of course. It's just a big blood suck fest. I guess the real question is, of course, you know, how would these people stop the vampire church? And, you know, the term midnight mass makes way more sense. I honestly thought my mom, who's not at all a horror person at all, bless her soul, for putting up with me talking about horror things when she probably never wants to hear about it. I need to find a significant other who watches some horror to really chat up with. I think that would do my mom some solids. But she pointed out that maybe, you know, it could mean mass murders. And while it may not be fully true, there are some fatalities here. It may be there's more cat fatalities to begin, but as we go, it'll become a regular Mortal Kombat bloodbath at the end of this all. I have to say, the main guy somehow seemingly not being dead was insane. I mean, he could totes be a vampire. My wild theories were like, I mean, look, he got super chewed on. He is a vampire, but I thought maybe it was one of these other 2 vampires having shape-shifting powers. I know that's a thing in some vampire media. I don't know all of them. There's a term. It's like they don't actually shapeshift. They put a something like cover your eyes, like a veiled type thing that you see what they want you to see. Is not a vampire power here as much as the garlic weakness is also not a thing here. But I thought about maybe that was a thing. Not the case though. It is at this point though, without a doubt, where I was thinking, wow, this show is going slow. If you're gonna do it 2 days, you definitely need to stop here, because 5 episodes in one day was a lot. It was probably too much. Sometimes, and it's not a bad thing, this show is a bit exhausting to binge. You don't need to do all this in one day. The 2-day split up is great. You know, I did this one, I ended day 1 here. I wish I'd broken it up 1 episode prior and ended at episode 4. That would have been almost a nice halfway split, and I think that kind of feels like a good endpoint for the story for day 1 if you're doing it. I mean, I definitely split up Hill House. I don't know how much I did, but I remember liking the heck out of that show because I think I really did space it out a lot more. I might have done like 2-3 episodes a day, and I think there was like a 9-10 episode show, so I think that worked probably a little better. I mean, the explaining of how our seeming lead came back to live has so much neck cracking. You'd make a chiropractor wince. Like, I chose my back problems of a 50-year-old to be massage fixes, not chiropractic fixes. I'm pretty cool with that, but a lot of neck cracking. And now, this guy is a GD vampire person, so I think we had, at this point, 3 total. I mean, people were drinking the drink down, but 3 for sure vampires existed. I really took me a while to figure out whose blood was in the doctor's vial in the beginning episode that blew up in the sun, because I think the priest definitely saw the doctor at one point. I'm assuming that was the blood work of someone who drank the blood, because I don't think he would have given away his blood. He knew what he was doing. Someone who was really gulping down gallons in bulk. Could have been a girl in the wheelchair, but they didn't want her to take any medical tests. So really, I think it was just a few odds and ends people who just were normally getting their, random blood tests. All the other medical miracles happening. I think I was missing some big details that I just was missing on some stuff. The overall story, really good. I definitely felt like I had a renewed energy and vigilance in the final 2 episodes coming back day 2 after my work day. I think that may be why, this episode is going to come back late on maybe Monday or even later in the week than that. Honestly, this episode was slow. But man, watching the ex-main character burn alive and all the end credits was just, the burning sound and the lead lady screaming. Like, it was actually pretty good. The ends are always strong in these, but yeah, this show at times really crawls at a point, and you really got to break it up. I don't know if a full day of this would really do you any justice. I could do a full day of AHS, full day of Big Mouth, Rick and Morty, what have you. This would not be one of those shows. I don't even know if I could do a full day of Tuca and Birdie. That might be too much emotion for me to process and deal with. So coming back to this show for Book 6, Acts of the Apostles. Day 2 of this, watching, thinking a little bit about the show. Don't have only so much time to think about your show when you're directing and producing ESPN Plus broadcasts. But this show had been very good. Sure, a bit slow at parts, but very clever and thought-provoking. Not super scary in the wild times up to this point, but real-life scary, which is almost worse at other points. And yes, it was wild to see the immediate aftermath and ashes of our recently deceased vampire. While this too is a slow episode of, midpoint after the wild end, there's some more vampire science that I'm interested in fairly. It's not, you don't want to go explaining around stuff too much like that, but it's interesting. The Walking Dead made that error, some people would say, in that one episode about trying to explain the zombie virus. There are some good family drama moments in Fallout. The best parts have to, of course, be anything with Raul Coley's sheriff character. The show having an interest in, literally drinking the Kool-Aid and religion, and having the Muslim religion be one of those few moments of freedom from this, now vampire church. Wild, slow build stuff. While some of the emotional build dialogue is just okay. The fantastic parts with that awkward realization that people are stuck on an island with no way off, and the few non-believers feel just a bit screwed. I may not have as much to say as we go into this episode of the show, but this miniseries has a way of taking things that are supposed to be sacred and beautiful, and nothing except for the context really makes it a haunting thing, as we know as its viewers. I gotta say, I thought the Kool-Aid thing seemed like it was a metaphor, but this show really made it literal. This show, the bottles of poison, they literally poisoned a guy with a drinking glass, the little plastic things, and put, the demon guy in church robes, the vampire, and OMG, the last 20 or so minutes of this show got crazy. I don't really know what the plan was here. Take an island over and then take over the rest of the world after. That felt like that was the plan, and it was like a religious pilgrimage, but I don't know if that main vampire really had those thoughts. I think he was just living his own vampire life, woot woot, and all that good stuff. This show, wild. I was shocked with the stuff that this show had done up to this point to a degree, but it went 110% overboard in the best possible way. I was freaking out with the new hell this show had brought upon us in this new village. some stuff crazy unrealistic, but the horror of this is actually like way too real. Like I said, truly wild. And I mean, the late parts of this episode, like this truly magical, horrifying 20 minutes or so of massive vampire turnings, flying vampire taking a lady after shooting a guy through his cranium, the priest, like this easily recoverable priest who's like eyes blinking as his head shot open, like so many good things here. I wish I had persevered through the whole show in one day at this point, like because it was so good, but I don't know if I would have enjoyed this as much if I had. So chalked it up to me and my recency bias. Definitely split up in 2 days at least. As great as episode 6's end is, you gotta split it up. You'll enjoy it so much more. Even like momentary revenge on our wild and hidden religious zealot, like so good. Something that was that always that one villainous character that you're just waiting for things to go bad for. It was temporary, but it even in a moment felt good. And we have, this small, incomplete band of survivors on this massive vampire island now. No amount of Scooby-Doo unmasking can solve this one. This end truly blew me away. And I am thankful that I gave it a second day to get here. Probably, like I said, would have enjoyed 5 more if I'd done it that way. Book 7, the final book in the series, if you will, Revelation. I mean, you really thought it was one thing first, this show. Like magical priests. I really figured it was witches. Something with witches and cursed items. Something closer to maybe like the Conjuring 3, which we talked about, not my favorite, but Conjuring 1 will always be the best, no doubt. But to have this become a vampire feeding frenzy, not just a church located thing, but like the whole island. They really did take over a whole town and started feeding on non-church going folks. A good chunk of the show might not feel good for Halloween, but this end of, it just ended up becoming a pretty scary show and a much better vampire thing than most. I enjoyed, Vampires on a Plane. I don't even know what that show, what that movie is called that has Dominic Purcell, and I don't know anyone else in that. But I know it wasn't all that good. If you could make it through the slow bits of this show, this could be a super fun, scary October viewing thing. Honestly, it might be fun to spread out over a whole week and pace yourself. It's perseverance and diligence and self-restraint, but you might have a real fun time doing it one day a week. It could be a really cool week to come home every night, gather your loved ones around if they're cool with vampire-y things, and get into it. I mean, all the talky talk slow parts. Really never cared for the young altar server storyline friendship, and they really did build out a lot of that talky talk stuff. But eventually seeing all the vampires and their friendships now turn to feeding moments between friends, family members. Every time that master vampire flies down and picks someone back up, I think it's scary, if not as jump scary, but it's so dark that you just hear the wings and you just see someone else go up and never come back down. I feel like the unnerving nature of all the Hill House ghosts was more messed up, but flying vampire is wild. I think one of the favorite parts for me is the whole darkness inside people thing of, somehow being made a vampire doesn't necessarily make you a monster inherently. Like, there's some part of you that can hold on to it, and some people just didn't want to do it, Instead, you have, the main guy's parents are trying to hold on to their humanity. Love that. Like, the one guy didn't drink the Kool-Aid and got attacked by a bunch of vampires in the church, and then he was a vampire, but not doing crazy stuff. And then, the mom, like, she was a distraction, and when she was a vampire, it was because she was fed on. Same thing. They never did anything bad in their vampire moments. So many good finale episode moments. The vampire casually shrugging off bullets while feeding. I really didn't see where, that was going, but having a vampire feeding frenzy to spread the vampire nature out into the world, it's like a pilgrimage thing. There's something fun in there. Like the church perversions is pretty raucous, and like I said, I am religious, don't get it twisted, but like I said, coming from a religious upbringing, it's such an interesting dichotomy this show puts out on you. And also, one more random actor thing. No one's going to know who Vincent Gale is. You should, though. I don't know. I really liked him in the things I've seen him in. He wasn't listed on IMDb. I thought I recognized him, but he was the character Flesh from Van Helsing, another vampire thing. What an up and down show that was from Sci-Fi. It has moments and started off as a really cool zombie, vampire, sentient hybrid thing, but there just wasn't enough special effects budget in that department. I feel at least as of now that The Strain really feels like the best overall multi-season vampire show out there, because this is a miniseries, so it can't be the same category. I'm not done with it yet, but it feels good for sure somewhere into the second season of it. One of my absolute favorite parts of the whole thing was the final 3 adult survivors were able to dam the entire damned vampire village, burning down the boats that they were going to use to go out and vampire up the world. The final few building sanctuaries from the sunlight. Like, the entire damned vampire town was not in a good place after this. You know, the Muslim sheriff came in clutch and got the last laugh, as well as the doctor, who was definitely a member of the LGBTQ community, and the school teacher who just never really agreed with all the crazy religious stuff that the town had been slowly shifting towards, with the midnight mass becoming a thing and everyone becoming crazy vampire people. Like, even the main vampire finally got damned by his hunger, being unable to fly away, being too distracted by bloodlust, and like having the lady like cut up his wings and weaken him to really try and end this thing. That too was truly special. The end was literally fire, but the final speech by Kate Siegel felt just like the final speech in the Snyder Cut of Justice League. Super good. And like there was just so much emotional depth. I feel like I want to just watch that speech again at some point. The music was really good too. I need to find out, if these soundtracks are on Spotify from Mike Flanagan Productions. It's fire music. The actual church hymn singing, just awaiting an eternal flamed moment, having that, pairing it with the Muslim prayer moments too, was pretty special in the final moments, and seeing all these vampires burn and having it be both sad and therapeutic. This whole village had a crazy thing happen to it, and it, all I really could have asked for or predicted. This end was nothing I could have guessed. I mean, at least a few kids got out of the end of it all. I will say there was something special, really satisfying about Crazy Zealot Lady being the one who, she was hiding from the vampire feeding frenzy. She didn't want to become a vampire. Obviously, she got shot and had to become one. Like, those are the people who couldn't even accept the eventual end, that she was super involved in the process. Like, everyone else was cool with it in their own, religious way, and she didn't have anybody. She was a terrible person, and, she couldn't accept in a final moment. Love it. Fantastic. Honestly, the end was so subtle and minimalistic after the, crazy fireworks of the island and all the people, but just knowing that the evil had been purged and, we are in this moment, that final girl or boy riding away in the ambulance, surviving another horror show. Like, I'll get right into it. Letterboxd rating for Midnight Mass, 4 stars easy. Could have been 4.5, but some of the slow parts just a little too slow for my liking. So yeah, this was a stream of conscious episode. I got a little low on the show halfway through, but man, was the setup and endgame flawless. The overall show has some amazing scares and some great ambiance, and the supernatural horror was paired so well with the real life horror, and the blend of religion and wickedness was so good. Seeing even how hard people will go with their belief system to justify things and what they'll do to save and give it continued life. There's some real deep humanity and grief stuff in here as well. Yes, unfortunately there are some true blah blah boring talky talk moments, and they do matter in the end, but the slow burn is just a little bit slow at times. And I love the emotion. It just didn't do it as much as Haunting of Hill House did kind of throughout. It took a lot to get through the end to get to that real emotional, resounding thing that kind of, like I said, chicken soup for your soul in visual form. And this is a true reminder that I do need to do Bly Manor to get more emotion and feels out there. But what did you think of the latest Flanagan Feartastic production? And how much did you tear up or think about life more than you wanted to? Let me know on social at either knickknack_IC or knickknackmovies on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, TikTok, YouTube, I know, everything, and the kitchen sink, and of course Letterboxd. But welcome to Oktoberfest, the true happiest of horror marvelous movies and terrifying TV shows. I can't wait to spend another spooky season with you. Well, cheers, and as always, until next time, cinephiles. Are you not entertained? I think this is gonna be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I don't like goodbyes. Let's just call this see you later, alligator.